So you think you know everything there is to know about Islamophobia. I say, think again. I'm out in Dearborn, Michigan, in front of the Islamic Center of America, the largest mosque in the United States. This mosque has been a target of Islamophobia, vandalism, threats, and even protests. So you think you know about Islamophobia. I say, think again. Oxford Dictionary defines Islamophobia as dislike and prejudice towards Islam and Muslims, especially as a political force. The Center for American Progress defines Islamophobia as exaggerated fear and hostility towards Muslims and Islam that's perpetrated by negative stereotype that results in bias, discrimination, and the marginalization and exclusion of American Muslims from social, political, and civic life in the United States. I think I agree more with the definition from the Center for American Progress, but I'd like to add on another layer. I think for me, Islamophobia also means anti-Muslim racism. Racism is bigotry plus power. It's not just individual acts of bigotry against our community or individual incidents of hate crimes or bias or discrimination. It is also the institutionalized Islamophobia that results in targeting of American Muslim communities across the country, which causes isolation and marginalization of our community. People will say, what do you mean by marginalization and isolation? American Muslims live in many parts of the United States of America in different communities. What we mean by this is that Islamophobia and the culture of Islamophobia has marginalized and isolated American Muslim communities. Policies like unwarranted surveillance of entire communities, mandatory secondary screenings at airports, child bullying cases in schools across the country, overbloated no-fly lists of American Muslims, border interrogations at the northern border of Muslims crossing back from Canada to the United States. For me, the difference between Islamophobia and other forms of racism is that it seems to be very acceptable by the general American public. Let's take the example of Bayan, a high school student from California, excited to graduate high school and go on with her life and go to college. And then guess what? Here comes her yearbook with her beautiful picture, and underneath they named her Isis Phillips. Just imagine what was going through that young woman's mind when she saw her picture with the name of a known terrorist group right at the bottom. This is just one example of the culture that our young people are experiencing in public schools across the country. Islamophobia is not just individual acts of bigotry, it's a culture that we now have in the United States of America. Islamophobia has been institutionalized in every aspect of our society, government, media, and in the communities in which we live. The Council on American Islamic Relations, CARE, put out a report in 2013 called Legislating Fear. This report not only documents the Islamophobia industry, an industry that cost over $119 million, that works to propagate negative stereotypes about Muslims and Islam. It also documents legislation and amendments to take the right to worship freely away from Muslims. Dozens of these have been presented or proposed or passed in cities across the country, including in the U.S. Congress. In the recent past, institutionalized fear and hate-mongering, targeting and marginalizing of a community led us to one of the most horrific incidents in our American history, the internment of our Japanese American sisters and brothers. We are now seeing a similar atmosphere, an acceptable culture of fear and hate against American Muslims, targeting, marginalization, exclusion of Muslim communities that has led people to believe that they may be in virtual camps, isolated. And we hope that we together can stand up and ensure that what happened to our Japanese American sisters and brothers will never happen again in this country. So how can we fight back against Islamophobia? Number one, as an American Muslim, know your history. This country never existed without Islam. This is your country, this is our country, and we need to start acting like this is our country. Number two, get informed and become politically active. When we unite and organize and mobilize as a